So today I've decided to talk about something that has been bothering me for the last few months, and this is the topic of circumcision. Now that's just my personal opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But I personally think that circumcision is a crime worse than rape, and it absolutely should be forbidden within democratic societies and within societies that claim to protect the rights of their members. Now, what exactly is circumcision? Circumcision is the removal of the foreskin, thereby exposing the gland of the penis, and uh, the foreskin has a lot of nerve endings, and they are actually the same nerve endings you can find on your fingertips or in your lips. And by removing all of those nerve endings, you obviously remove a lot of sensation, and thereby make it less likely for man to orgasm or feel sexual pleasure. Another reason circumcision reduces sexual pleasure is because the foreskin actually works as a sort of natural mechanical lubricant because you got skin rubbing over the gland, like, I don't know, like that. And if you remove that, you kind of don't have that anymore. You kind of don't have skin equally rubbing over the whole area, but just the touch of, I don't know, your fingers or something like that. And that also makes it kind of harder for you to actually experience pleasure by doing masturbation. And that was actually the main reason it was implemented within Western societies like the USA. In the 19th century, circumcision was implemented because masturbation was seen as a great form of sin. It was seen as that bad, evil something that created mental illness. And so, in order to reduce mental illness within young individuals, I don't know, the English people thought it was a good idea to like just circumcise the babies. And yeah, defenders of circumcision claim that it has a few benefits. So we'll go over those. First, the first benefit that I hear a lot of times is that it reduces penile cancer. Now, I personally think that's kind of a weak argument because, of course, you're not gonna get cancer on your foreskin if you don't have foreskin, but we're never using that argumentation for anything else. Like, you don't see people removing their breasts because they don't want to get breast cancer, or like maybe in some cases, but not most of the time. You don't see people removing their second lungs or kidneys because it reduces the risk of cancer. So why should we remove skin on the penis because it reduces the risk of this part getting cancer? Another reason I think it's kind of a weak argument is because penile cancer is one of the rarest cancers out there. So yeah, obviously it is a weak argument. Now, an argument that I think is actually a little bit better than the argument of reduced penile cancer is the argument that it reduces UTIs. It in fact does that, but UTIs again are extremely rare, and only 33% of people in the world are circumcised. So you would think that all of those other uncircumcised people would get UTIs, but they don't. Because again, UTIs are kind of rare. And even if you have one, there are ways to like treat it and stuff. I think removing all of that sensation and all of that sexual pleasure just because you think a guy is incapable of like taking care of his hygiene is kind of fucked up. And it's kind of sexist if you actually think about it, to think guys are like those dirty people that cannot take care of their hygiene. Now, the strongest argument, in my opinion, in favor of circumcision is that it reduces the infections with STDs like syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, or HIV. Especially the reduction in HIV seems to be kind of significant, 50 to 60%, according to the data we have. Like, that sounds like a lot, but it's actually not that much if you actually look at the data in a bigger picture, basically. Because the highest number for you getting HIV by engaging in sexual intercourse with another person that has HIV, and engaging in sexual intercourse in the most riskiest way possible, being receptive anal sex. So the highest number I could find was 1.5%. That's not a lot. So let's just assume that in general, the the percentage of you getting HIV by having sexual intercourse with an HIV positive person is around 1%. Let's just assume that. Getting circumcised reduces your risk by 50%, so you now have a risk of 0.5%. Like a reduction from 1% to 0.5%, I don't think is like an argument that is really like strong enough to like accept that we are forcing people to like lose all of that sexual sensitivity. And also there are way better methods to reduce HIV infections, like generally practicing safe sex, for example, using condoms, or there's even a chemical solution called PrEP, and it has 2 chemical components, and it reduces your risk of getting HIV by 99%. So I kind of am confused why we're not just giving free condoms and free PrEP pills to people in sub-Saharan Africa, why we are circumcising those people instead of giving them free condoms and free PrEP pills. Because I think it's kind of unfair to do that. Because it's also kind of like, that might be a little bit far-fetched, but it's kind of racial profiling to like give all of those black people circumcised penises, and then white people are less likely to have that. Like, it's kind of, you know what I mean? It kind of is problematic to do that. And now another reason people defend circumcision is because of religious freedom, which I think is so fucked up. But anyways, they claim it is their religious freedom to circumcise their babies and their children. For example, if you're a Jew or if you're a Muslim, in general, you will have to be circumcised to actually belong to that religion. And I kind of think it's fucked up to like actually pray to a god that wants you to remove a part of your body. Like, I don't know, but okay, I can accept that. I can accept someone wanting to be, I don't know, part of that religion. But I cannot accept them forcing circumcision on their children, because that's something different, you know? You're forcing a person into your religion, you're forcing them to accept that religion, and I don't know, when they don't want to be inside of that religion anymore, they'll still have those scars on their body, literal scars. And I don't know, I think that's not cool. Like, how can that be? How can that be in a democratic society that we allow people to like completely determine the rights of babies? And I just think it's taking away the sexual authenticity of people. And you have to understand, a lot of people lose the sexual authenticity and they have no one to turn to, because the fellow women, they don't care, and the fellow men, they tell them to man up and that they should not be crybabies and that it's not that big of a deal. And no one accepts the pain. And I actually have a personal story about that, because now I was not circumcised, but I had a friend who was. We didn't do any sexual intercourse or anything, just so that those questions are like already answered. I just knew that he was circumcised, and I was like the first person who like accepted this person's pain, and the first one he could talk to, and like because everyone else was like calling him a bitch and stuff when he like brought it up that he kind of felt violated in that way. And I don't know, I think it's actually worse than rape, because as stupid as it might sound, when you're raped, as long as the other person does not infect you with an STD or anything, at least you don't see anything on your body, you know? While when you're circumcised, you get that scar for the rest of your life, and every day you look in your pants, you're reminded, okay, those people of my religion had power over me, or my father had power over me, or whoever it was that's basically is the reason why you got circumcised. That person, that being had power over me and could determine my sexual authenticity fully. And I just think it's unacceptable that we accept that in a society that claims to protect the rights of its members. Like, it's just unacceptable. Now, another reason I think circumcision is really, really bad is because of female-male dynamic. Now, female circumcision is even worse than male circumcision. Nobody argues against that because it would be stupid to do that. Because female circumcision is the removal of whole organs and kind of like makes it even impossible for some women to naturally give birth, leading to some women having to undergo C-sections just so that they can give birth to their own children. And obviously, female circumcision is also forbidden in most countries, but obviously should be completely eradicated. But I also think male circumcision should be eradicated. And in general, when it comes to circumcision, we don't really know the origins, but it appears that circumcision originated in order to basically remove the other gender from another person. For example, when it comes to female circumcision, everything that is protruding out of the woman gets removed. And all those things that are protruding out of her, they kind of like represent the male aspects of a woman. And when it comes to male circumcision, the most sensitive, most weak part of the man gets removed in that sense, being the female aspect. And those are not even my words, those are the words of some doctor. I actually forgot his name, but they are not even my words. But anyways, and literally, when it comes to male circumcision, the female part is removed, and a lot of people like argue in favor of circumcision because it makes you more of a man. But I don't get it how it makes you more of a man by removing the female parts of you, because a lot of people always view female and male energies in that sense as opposites, but I personally think that female and male energy kind of feed into each other, and the more female energy you have, the more male energy you have as well. So if you remove the female aspect of someone, you're not making them more of a man, you're actually making them less of one, because you kind of remove all of that strength from that guy. And when it comes to Hinduism, for example, they actually have a cool concept about that. I think it's the concept of Shakti and Shiva. It's pretty cool, actually. And basically, you're never supposed to like turn against your own Shakti in that sense, being your own feminine power, because if you do that, you also lose your male power. And I would highly agree with that, because when you turn against your own feminine aspects as a guy, you don't get more powerful, you just get, I don't know, you become that kind of stereotype of a violent guy, and not a guy that is more powerful and can, like, and more potent and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a balance. You need both feminine and male aspects in your psyche. And so that's another reason I think circumcision is really, really bad, because it intends to remove aspects of you that kind of are necessary. And I'm not saying that I don't know, circumcised people are cripples or are less of a man or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the intention is to literally remove female parts of them. And that already is bad, because you need those parts in order, like, you need female aspects in your being in order to, like, sustain yourself. Another reason I think circumcision is bad is when it comes to sex dynamic between men and women, because it actually creates inequality. When you're circumcised, you obviously feel less pleasure. Now, that leads to you either feeling less than the women, because the women, they can feel more pleasure than you do, and so you feel, okay, I am less worthy than them. That is sexism, that's not okay. Or you feel better than women, which is also not okay, which is also really, really bad sexism, which is even almost worse sexism. For example, what do I mean by that? When a guy can last longer in sex, he basically wins the game of that sexual intercourse. and the woman is forced to take that submissive role because she's the one who comes first because she has more sensation. And that also is kind of, yeah, a problem because you're kind of forcing women into submission by circumcising men because you are giving those men, yeah, a dominant role in the bedroom. And when we look for example, at the mythos, at the story of Lilith, Lilith literally fled the Garden of Eden because she didn't want to lie. She didn't want to lie below Adam. And circumcision directly enforces that again. Circumcision basically enforces the belief that women are inferior because they come before the man comes. And yeah, that's another reason I think circumcision is just bad, because it kind of enforces unequal gender roles. And you can actually see that if you compare a map of if you compare a map of circumcision rates with a map of rape cases, you can see that in countries that have where more circumcision is going on, you have more rape going on as well. Now, that might just be a correlation because, after all, circumcision usually happens within misogynistic religions like Islam, in which women are considered, not my quotes, not my words, but the words of Islam, animals. But it might also be because of a slight causality. Because, again, if you remove all of those nerve endings, if you remove all of that pleasurable sensation within a guy, it might make them sexually frustrated and might lead to them seeking out unacceptable behavior in order to compensate the sexual frustration. So we need to stop circumcision, not just because it is a human right violation and because it actually violates freedom of religion, because it enforces a religious imprint upon you, but we also need to stop it because it enforces unequal gender roles and it enforces you viewing women as less than men, or viewing them as more than men. But that's less likely because men have fragile egos, and so they are more likely to actually view women as less than themselves because they experience more pleasure, which I actually, personally, I would view it differently. Personally, I view the person who has more pleasure than me as superior to me. But that's, again, just my personal opinion. And most people do it the other way around. They view people that come before them as inferior to them. And so, yeah, that kind of is a problem because circumcision, as I explained, directly leads to men thinking women are less worthy than they themselves are, which of course is fucked up, but that's the subconscious mechanism behind it. And people don't understand how much of our world is determined by the subconscious. Literally, the earth is held up by the water, meaning that the material world is held up by our subconscious. And also not just the subconscious of individuals, but the subconscious of whole societies. And when the subconscious of a whole society views women as weaker, it will lead to unequal gender roles. And that's just not cool. And another problem I actually see when it comes to circumcision is that it might actually be less comfortable for women to engage in sexual intercourse with men that are circumcised. Although those men will last longer, probably because they feel less pleasure, they're also more likely to concentrate their energies on the gland, on the tip of the penis, and thereby do what is called the jackhammer method, meaning they just go like that instead of going like that. And going like that is actually better because when you look at female anatomy, most of their nerve endings is actually right at the entrance of the vagina. So actually doing the jackhammer method of penetrating them again and again is actually kind of not how you should go about when you want to give pleasure to a woman. And so it actually might lead to longer sex being circumcised, but still less pleasurable sex for both genders, because even though the man is more likely to last longer, he kind of I don't know, he kind of doesn't fuck in a way that is comfortable for the woman, because he does not feel sensation over his whole penis, but just at the tip. And yeah, those are basically the reasons I think circumcision is bad. And